Hey, what is going on, everybody? It is Rob, aka The Diligent Dev, and welcome back to part 2 of our photo sharing app. Now in this section, we're going to tap into some native device features such as camera and GPS to take photos and get the user's location. So let's go ahead and jump over to the computer and get right into it. Okay, so here we are over at the computer, and I have our app all loaded up in Visual Studio Code, and I opened a terminal by going to Terminal, New Terminal. Now, the first thing we're going to do is make sure that we have Capacitor enabled. Now, it should already be enabled, but we're just going to run this command just to make sure that it is. So in the terminal, type Ionic Integrations, enable Capacitor. And we see that integration capacitor is already enabled, and if it's not, it will go ahead and do that for you. Now, the next thing we need to do is initialize capacitor inside of our application. So we're going to run the following command, npx cap init, and then you need to specify your app name. So I'm just going to say photo sharing app. And then we're going to need an app ID. And typically the convention for this is the reverse of your domain name and then your app ID. So if I was going to do this for diligentdev.com, I would say com.diligentdev.photosharingapp. And we'll run that. The next thing we're going to want to do is build our Ionic app. So in the terminal, we're going to run Ionic build. And this is going to take a second to build, so once it's done, I will be right back. And now that our app is built successfully, what we need to do is add our different platforms. So if you want to run this for iOS, you'll run the following command, npx cap add iOS. And I'll just go ahead and run this. And we see now that we have this iOS folder, and this is our iOS app. The next thing we're going to do is install our Android app, npx cap add Android. And you don't have to do this. If you wanted to build strictly for iOS, you could run the iOS command, and if you wanted to strictly build for Android, you could run the Android command. And we see now we have our Android folder and this Gradle folder, and this is where our Android app lives. The next thing we need to do is install the Native Run plugin from Ionic. And the reason that we're going to install this is because we want live reloads. So that way, when we're running our app inside of a simulator, when we make code changes, we'll be able to see those code changes live. So to do that, we'll come back down to the terminal and we'll run the following command. I have to put sudo in front of this because I'm on a Mac, but we'll run npm install -g for global native -run. It's going to prompt me to put in my password. And we see now this has been installed successfully. Now to run Ionic inside of our emulator with live reload, for iOS, we're going to run the following command. Ionic cap run -l --external. And then it's going to ask you which platform you'd like to run. And first, I'm going to choose iOS. So what it's doing right now is starting a development server for us. And you'll see that it's going to automatically open up Xcode. And now that the app has been indexed, what we can do is go ahead and pick our simulator if you were on a Mac. Now this is only going to be available if you are on a Mac. And then you can hit this play button so that it will launch our simulator and our app. And if I pull this phone or simulator over, you see it's firing up our app. It says it's using app server with our server name. And you'll see down here, if we look, we just have a blank screen and we're getting a bunch of errors. So unfortunately, it doesn't tell you inside of Xcode exactly what's going wrong. So what we need to do is launch this in the browser, go to our console, see what type of errors we're getting, and fix those before we can go ahead and run them on the iOS simulator. So I'm just going to go ahead and stop this. I'm also going to stop this by hitting Control-C. And then what I'm going to do is run Ionic serve. And I'll pull over the browser window that just got launched. We'll go to Inspect. We will go to the console and see what warnings we're getting. And it's saying we're missing an Ion card header. So what we need to do is come back to our application, and we're going to go to source, views, authentication, and we have this Ion card header in here, and we must not have imported it. So I'm just going to import it right underneath the Ion card. And register it as a component. And then we're going to go ahead and save. We'll pull our window back. Let's reload and make sure we're not getting any other warnings or errors. And we are not. So we're going to come back here. I'm going to stop this. And then we're going to run that Ionic cap run, and we're going to choose iOS again. Then I'm going to open up Xcode. And we see that our development server is ready. So I'll come back, we will hit play again, cross our fingers, and hope that the app shows up in our emulator. Okay, so our app has shown up in the emulator now. So if we go ahead and click here, and I sign in, and we see now we're inside of our app in the emulator. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to close out Xcode and close out our emulator. We'll stop tasks. Let's go down here and let's run the same thing for Android. So we'll choose Android. And you can't see it because it launched on my other window, but it launched Android Studio. And we see that we have our Capacitor / Ionic app running. And we can see we can just click the play button. And if I drag the Android emulator over, we see we have our app. And if we go ahead and sign in, we see that we have all of our tabs in here and the app is working correctly. And as you saw earlier, we don't get great error messages when we're running our app natively. So what I like to do is just develop my app inside of the browser and then port it over to the phone. In order to do that, we're just going to close out our emulator here. I'm also going to close out Android Studio. And we're going to stop this process with Control-C. And we're going to launch our app in the browser. So I'm going to run Ionic serve. And our app is launched. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it over here. We're going to inspect so we get our nice phone. And I'm just going to take this and detach it so that I can make this smaller. And now that we have the app running in the browser, the first thing I want to do is go ahead and sign in. And we want to change the name of this tab. We're going to use this tab to launch our camera and take photos. So in order to change this, we're going to go to SRC, Views, and then Tabs. And then we see we have our first tab up here. So what I'm going to do is come down and find my icons. And triangle is the first tab's icon. So we're just going to change that to Camera Outline. I'm just going to copy this. We're going to come down and we're going to return it to the template. And then I'm going to come back up here and we're going to use it there. And I'm going to turn off autosave. And you'll see that when I reloaded the page, since it was showing me a blank screen, it took us back to the sign-in page. And we don't typically want that to happen to our users. So what we're going to do is we're going to head to our main.ts. And right here where it creates our app, we're going to wrap this in a Firebase call. So what we're going to do is check to see if the user has their auth state changed. So I'm going to say let's app, and I'm going to set that to any. We're going to get rid of this const here. And then we're going to wrap this whole thing in auth.onAuthState changed. It's going to be an async method, and it's going to give us a user. Then we're going to say if ! app. So if there is no app, We're going to take this right here and cut it and paste it in right there. Then I'm going to come back. Well, actually I need to save. I'm going to come back and sign in. And then I'm going to reload the page to make sure that that worked. And when we reload the page, we see that our user wasn't logged out, and we see we have our camera icon down on tab 1. So let's go ahead and change the name of that. So we'll go back to tabs, and we're just going to change the name of tab 1 to camera. And save that. And we see now we have our tab with the icon and name that we wanted. The next thing we're going to do is add Firebase storage because we're going to need to store our images inside of Firebase storage. So let's head back to main.ts, and up here at the top underneath this Firestore import, we're going to say import Firebase/storage. Then we're going to come back down, and underneath this export const for our Firebase Firestore, we're going to say export const storage equals firebase.storage. And we'll go ahead and save that. Then we'll head back to tab 1. And the way I envision this tab looking is we're just going to have a button in the middle of the screen that says camera. And when you click it, it will launch our camera so that we can take a picture. To do that, we're going to import a couple of Ionic components. We're going to import the Ion button. And we're also going to import the Ion icon because I'd like to give my button an icon. We'll come down and we will add these to our components. Then up at the top of the script tag, we're going to import our Firebase storage. So we're just going to say import storage from main.ts. And we're going to import our Capacitor plugins to launch the camera. So I'm going to say import plugins and camera result type from @capacitor/core. And then out of our plugins, we're going to pull out our camera and geolocation. So we're going to say const camera geolocation equals plugins. Now, when we're storing our images, we want to make each image's file name completely unique, so that way there's no naming conflicts inside of our storage buckets. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste some code. It just creates a GUID or a unique identifier for each of our images. And I will leave the code for this in the description. And there's also going to be a Bitbucket Repo attached to this. So I'm just going to come over here. I'm going to copy this, and right below our Explorer container, I'm just going to paste that in. And essentially what it does is it takes this string and it replaces it with some random letters and numbers. Then we're going to head down to export default, and we're going to create our setup method. We're going to create a method inside of here to take our picture. So I'm going to say const take picture equals async. We're going to say const image equals await camera dot get photo. And then we're going to pass in some properties here. We're going to say quality. We'll set that to 90. We'll set allow editing to false. And the result type that we want out of this will be camera result type dot base 64. Next, below this, we're going to say if, and I'll scroll down a little bit so we can see this better. We're going to say if image, we'll throw a question mark behind it to check that it's not null, dot base 64 string. We're going to need to get our user, and one thing I forgot to do up here was import our authentication from main, and we're also going to need our DB as well, so make sure you do that here at the top. We're going to come back down here, and inside of this if block, we'll get the current user, so we'll say const user equals auth.current user. We'll create our GUID. So we're going to say const GUID equals UUID v4, and that will return a GUID string to us. We're going to say const file path. We'll do a backtick because we're going to do some text interpolation on here. We'll do $ and 2 brackets. We're going to say user, make sure that it's not blank, UID. Then we'll do a // we'll say images, and then we're going to do another $ and brackets, and inside of there we will do our GUID. And then we'll put a period right behind that, and then we're going to want to save it in the format that the camera took the image in. So we'll do the $ in brackets again, and we'll say image.format, and that will give us the extension. Next, we're going to grab a storage ref, so we'll say const storage ref equals storage.ref. And then we're going to save our image inside of Firebase storage. So we're going to say await storage ref dot child, and we're going to pass it the file path dot put string, and we're going to give it our image and the base 64 string off of that image, and we're going to say that the format is base 64. Next, we're going to get the download image from this file that we just saved. So we're going to say const URL equals await storage ref dot child and pass it the file path. And then we're going to say dot get download URL. The next thing we're going to do is grab the user's location. So we're going to say const lock equals await geolocation dot get current position. And then the last thing we're going to do is save all of this in the database. So we're going to say awaits db.collection. We're going to reference the user's collection. We're going to grab the doc that contains the user's ID. So we'll say user.uid. We'll make a sub-collection off of this called images. And we're going to add our image to it. So we will pass in an object, and we're going to say image. We'll pass it the URL, and then we're going to say location. We get a latitude and longitude off this, so I'm going to say lat. Let me scroll up a little bit so we can see this better, and set that to lock.coords.latitude, and LON for lon, and set that to lock.coords.longitude. Hit Alt-Shift-F to format everything. And then outside of this method, but still inside of our setup, we're going to return all of this. So we're just going to return camera, which we have not imported yet. So let's go import the camera icon. So we'll head up here, and right below our components that we import, we're going to import camera from Ion icons /icons. We'll come back down. We'll return that icon to the template, and we're also going to return our method of take picture. And now that we have everything we need for the template, let's head up there. We're going to change the title of the template to camera. I'm going to get rid of everything inside of this Ion content. We're going to create an Ion button. We're going to make the size large, fill equal to solid, and when we click on this button, we want to take picture. Inside of here, we'll have an Ion icon. We'll set the name equal to camera, and go ahead and close that. I will put some white space, so we're going to say ampersand NBSP, and make the title of the button camera. Hit Alt-Shift-F to format everything, and then we're going to save it. And we see we're getting an error. the Explorer container that we removed. So let's come down and remove this Explorer container and also remove it from the components. And we'll save again. And we see we now have our camera button, but our Ion icon is not coming through. And that is because it's not name, it's actually icon here. So now we have our Ion icon. Now I'd like to center this button in the screen. So let's head down here and we'll create a style tag. Inside of here, we will create a style called center. We'll give it display of flex, align items equals center, justify content. We'll also set that to center, and we will give it a height of 80 VH. I'll head back up and we will wrap everything inside of our Ion content in a div with a class of center. And we see we now have our camera button centered. And now that we have all of our functionality done, we can go ahead and test it. Now, before we test it inside of a native emulator, I'm gonna go ahead and test it in the browser because that will show us better error messages if we get any. So to do that, we're going to click on camera and it's just gonna launch. I'm going to choose this sample JPEG and click open. And as it stands right now, it's not going to do anything, but if we go over to Firebase, and we go ahead and look, we now have our user, the user that I logged in with, and we have our subcollection of images. And if I click on that, we have one image in here and we see our data. We have our image and the location. So I'm just gonna go ahead and grab this and paste it into the browser. And what this will do is it's gonna go ahead and just download it. So if I open it up and show you, it is the exact photo that we selected. So I'll go ahead and get rid of all this stuff. We'll close out of the image and close out of this. To test this in the emulator, we'll go ahead and stop our server. So I'll click Control-C. I'm just gonna go ahead and close this out. And if you go to your terminal and hit the up arrow, it'll give you your last run commands. And we're gonna run that Ionic cap run -L -external. Go ahead and run that. We will choose Android, and I am going to run this in an Android emulator because it has better capabilities than what the iOS emulator has. And I know that's kind of ironic on here since I'm doing this from a Mac, but just bear with me here. So go ahead and click that. And what this is going to do is it's going to open up Android Studio. So we have that, and I'll drag it over here. And then all we need to do is click our play icon. So we'll go ahead and launch our Android emulator. Then I'll go ahead and just sign in here. And we see we have our camera tab. So I'll click on the camera button. This will ask me if we want to take an image from our photos or take a picture. I'm going to choose take picture. And then we're going to click on this. And we'll click the checkbox. And we see that nothing's happened. We haven't indicated to the user yet that we have a photo that has been saved. But if we head back over to Firebase, we see we have a new image in here. So go ahead and click it. It'll give us the image URL and the location, latitude and longitude. I'm just going to go ahead and copy this and we will paste it into the browser so that we can download our image. And we see that it is the exact image that we took out of the camera. Just go ahead and close that. Now for your location down here, if you go back to the Android emulator and you click these three dots, the first option here is your location, and as they have it set right out of the box, it is Google's headquarter location. But you can go ahead and just search and add a new location in there if you desire to do that. And that's going to go ahead and wrap it up for this video. Now to recap, we've managed to tap into the native camera and GPS of the phone to take images and get the user's location. In the next video in this series, we will look at how we can display those images inside of our app and also see if we can do something with a location. So if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and enable notifications so you'll be notified when that new video comes out. Now, if you got any value out of this video, I'd also appreciate it if you hit that like button. It really helps out my channel. And until next time, happy coding.